like we normally do, so we should be going here. And again, welcome to everybody for our week 3 office hour. Actually, it's week 4, but it's labeled as week 03 in the class, and it's a long story, but that's how that works. So glad everybody's here. We want to make this informal, as we always have, and questions and interruptions are welcome, and we will go from there. I wanted to take a minute and go over week 3 in the class. We should have had 1 or 2 meetings. My mistake that I don't know what my brain was doing. I just stopped in the middle of that. Did not get a couple of groups assigned. Again, my apologies for that if any of you are in that group or anybody that's watching the recording. But you should have had 1 or 2 group meetings by now. And you should have had a couple of things in those group meetings. And this, if this is a reminder, then I just apologize for the reiteration. You should have had the discussion about the topics for the week and the 1-page report submitted by the group leader. And the second thing is you should have been talking about how you're preparing for the doohickeys assignment and what that looks like starting in week 5, which is 2 weeks from Saturday when that is due. Okay? And of course, you should be doing the quizzes and the other individual pieces that go along with that. Did we have any questions on that from any of you here that we can answer? I think we've been answering those as we've gone along, but hopefully if there are any, we can take care of that. Okay, great. One more question. This is, did I give you guys in the materials a sample doohickeys paper?
Yes, you did.
Okay, I thought I had. I just wanted to double check that. Okay, that was a good one. That was an A paper. Certainly I know it well enough to know by now if you copy it, I always make that joke and nobody's ever done it. So I don't expect you guys will either. But it's a great way to give you an idea of the format and the organization and everything else that goes with that. So hopefully that's helpful to you. All right. Any other questions on the class at all? Because if not, we'll jump into our topic for the night. Okay.
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead. No, that's fine, Eddie. Go ahead.
On my, I submitted my interview that was just answering questions, and then you told me to submit that along with my summary page, but I had already submitted my summary page, and so I couldn't attach it, and so I sent you an email, but you didn't email me back, so I didn't know if I still needed to attach the question and answer summary page.
No, you don't. I will fix that. Actually, what I'll do is I'll open that up, Abby, and you can resubmit it together.
Okay, sounds good.
And that was for week 3?
Yeah, it was from last week. You told me to attach it to the 9th assignment, and
okay.
And I had already submitted it when you sent me that. So.
Okay, I will open that up. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
Okay.
Oh, right. I have a question.
Yes.
When I was writing that paper up, it looked like you weren't supposed to give the questions and answers, but just write a summary. Were you supposed to submit the question and answers too?
No, just a summary is fine.
Oh, okay, okay.
If you did it, it's certainly not going to hurt, Carolyn. But if you just mainly the summary of what you guys went through with that and where you came from is fine.
Okay.
That'll be great. Because I get a chance to look at the meeting on tape anyway, and that helps to get a flavor for how you guys are doing as a group and everything else. So that's there as well.
Okay.
So, all right. Okay, any other questions? If not, we will jump in. All right, so a couple of things. I want to talk about equal employment. Did anybody get a chance to listen to my ramblings that I put up, I think it was yesterday for this week, on some of the equal employment and diversity?
Yeah, I was able to see that.
Okay, any thoughts on that, Lynn Ann, to kind of kick off our discussion?
Probably more so in the diversity part, because when you have people that are new coming into your company and they're from different ethnic backgrounds, different religions, you're learning to work together with them and understand their background and understanding where they're coming from. Sometimes you're going to have people that you're not going to get along with, and that's why you are learning to work together in teams because they have different talents and you have different talents and you have to learn to get along.
Okay, very good. Well, since you did that, let's just jump into that topic first. We won't go to equal employment. We'll go to diversity first, since you gave us such a good introduction there. I appreciate that. And I think what you're trying to get at least what I hear, Lynn, is you're talking about diversity from a very practical perspective. It's how do we work together, get along, be happy, and all the good things that go with that. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so that's a good thought to start out with that. All right, any other thoughts on what this concept of diversity is before we get more specific on some of the technical things?
I would like to say something also is that when in one of my HR interviews, they talked about diversity, and they said it's not just because you are either black or white or male or female. It's they want to add flavor and add experience, life experiences, stuff like that to their company. If they're planning to do something from, say, a different perspective to market to the Asian culture, they would probably have somebody to market that is Asian instead of someone that's American.
Right. Okay. And we're going to talk about a couple of different things, something as simple as food and some other cultural issues when we talk about diversity. So good lead into that, Lynn, thank you. All right. Any other initial thoughts on this concept of diversity? What it is, what it isn't? Is it got a bad name? Is it got a good name? What do you guys think? Go ahead.
Well, I was thinking that when there used to be quotas, then it kind of had a bad connotation.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, it did. Thanks, Linda. I appreciate that. And that was a 70s thing that held over all the way through the 90s, I think, and maybe into the early 2000s. Some people still think that's the case. And companies that do that right are not even concerned with those quotas. They may artificially bring in people that are different, but they also know that there's diversity in lots of different ways of doing things. So, well, I want to talk about this concept of diversity for a little bit and get your input on this. I think the thing I want to look at is absolutely not positively at all having this for the wrong reasons, but doing it because we want to have a diverse company. Now, Alan, welcome. Glad to have you. How are you tonight? I think he's just getting set up. All right.
Me?
Yes, how are you, Alan?
Sorry.
No,
Good.
don't be sorry. Glad to have you.
Apparently we got started earlier than last week, so okay.
Yeah, we started a little bit earlier. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
We're talking about diversity and what that means, and we've had a couple of comments, so I'm going to give a couple of thoughts, then get some more input from you guys. Now, I want to start with something really easy. I told you I was going to talk about food. Now, how many of you like to eat the same food pretty much all the time? Anybody? Not big variety, not big experimenters. I got a couple of heads nod. Carolyn, is that a head nod I see?
That's definitely a head nod.
Okay, all right.
I'm not adventurous with food.
Okay, all right. Anybody else in the same boat Carolyn's in? Let me guess, Carolyn, I would bet you have one of those plates that has that so you can't let the peas and the other things touch each other.
How do you know that?
Oh, first of all,
nothing touches, and I only eat one thing at a time. I'm a clock eater. Yeah.
I'm married to a person like that. So I'm just guessing, but I was right.
It's some sort of personality disorder, but hey,
no, I don't think so at all.
Okay.
And I hope this example isn't at your expense, because I don't mean it to be.
No, it's okay. I know it's
but
weird.
one of the things that food does for me is that when you look at food, there's folks that are comfortable with a certain diet. Again, I'm married to a person like that. I'm using my wife and myself as an example because I am just the opposite. I will try anything. Now, I'm not sure I would do like those gross food TV shows or something like that. I'm not going to go eat, dog ears or something like that. But anything that's semi-normal for a human being to eat, I'll give it a try. And my point is, and let me ask, this is the next question with this, is have any of you ever, including Carolyn, tried something that was really different, that was outside your comfort zone, and you liked it? Does that ever happen to anybody?
Oh yeah, my husband takes us to an Asian noodle place, a Korean place, and
Okay.
and it was hard for me to try it, but I did, and now we go back there often.
Okay, perfect. Anybody else?
Thai food and German food.
All right, at the same time?
Oh no, not be good.
Okay.
But I
All
like
right.
Thai food better. So yeah.
Okay. And was that something you'd ever tried before a certain time?
No.
Okay. So you experimented with that, Lynn Ann, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I had a couple others. I don't want to miss anybody. Any
I
other
tried
examples?
that for 4 months.
Say that again, Abby. You were cutting out.
I lived in China for 4 months, and I tried all sorts of things that I've never had here. And some of that food was good. Some of it wasn't so good. Some of it I really missed, though. So,
Okay. So you gave it a try.
yeah, I'm one of those people, though, that will try everything at least once, and then I'll decide if I like it and want more.
There you go. There you go. Well, this is a very simple analogy, and the concept I want to use with this is this concept of diversity. Is that if I have a person that's, let's say, lived in a different place, or I have a person, in our case, that may be a very different religious background from us, or I have a person that has a single parent, that was raised by a single parent, or is a single parent family, or you can go on and on and on. A person that is tall or short, or a person that struggles with a language. You look at all that, and individually you may say, well, that's kind of hard for me to accept, and that's kind of the food thing, you know. But if I try that other food, I was good, and if I try to get to know this person, it can be really a beneficial thing. And I've got a personal example I want to share with you. When 110 years ago, when Brigham Young was still there, I think, I went to BYU. I graduated from there, met my wife, and you know the usual story. But when I first went there, I think it was my first semester or my second semester, I stayed in the dorms. And this experience happened to me, and it was exactly like I'm telling it. I don't think I'm embellishing it much at all. Went down the hall in Helaman Halls, if any of you know where that is, or any have family that live there or anything else. And got to my room, and I said, that's really a weird smell. I wonder whose dorm room that is that has that really weird smell. And so I knocked on the door, and somebody opened the door, and that smell just came cascading out, and I thought I was going to become ill. And this very kind man that was probably at least 10 years older than I was stuck my hand out and said, "Hello, you must be Jeff, come on in." I didn't know whether I should run or get a gas mask or whatever it was. His nationality was Korean, and he literally had just come over from Korea. He was at BYU getting his degree while his family still lived in Korea. It didn't take a long time, but it took a while for this person to become a very dear friend. It was a very different experience for me, but it stretched me. It caused me to be way outside my comfort zone. It caused me to challenge lots of my beliefs and challenge lots of things, but after that semester, he only stayed for one semester because his wife and kids came over after that. But we got to be very close friends. He taught me wonderful things about the Korean culture, and even to the point where I even ate the food that made that smell and actually did not mind it. It was probably not my favorite thing. It was called kimchi.
Yeah.
I don't know if any of you have any experience with that. It's something you like bury in the backyard for 3 months and pull it out and eat it. And I thought I would be dying if I ate it, and it was actually pretty good. Yeah. Now, I know this is kind of crazy, but that was something that was a very realistic example to me of how I was stretched. I was not prepared for that. I wasn't ready for it. I didn't expect it. I had no idea it was coming, and it was a great blessing in my life. The man was a former bishop. He came to the U.S. to get his degree. a wonderful family who I got to know after they came over. Humble, just everything wonderful. And had I not had that experience, it was kind of forced on me, but it was a great stretching and growth time for me. But I say that because I think all of us, whether it's a big experience or a little one, have the opportunity to look at or look for people that are different than us and do something about that to change who we are. And again, I'm giving this example because it wasn't easy for me, but I did it, and it was a great blessing in my life. And there's been times I've not done so well with that, and times I've done okay with that. So does anybody have an experience where you found the concept of dealing with people that are different than you? And it's okay if you had one that didn't work, because we probably have those too. An example of where this concept of diversity was in your life and how that played out. And would love to hear some of those examples.
I have some, because my father was in the Air Force when I was growing up, and so I spent most of my early years of life living out of the United States instead of in the United States. In fact, I was 18 before I realized that Washington State and Washington, D.C. were not the same place.
Okay.
And then I married somebody that was in the Navy, so then we still traveled. So I had experience seeing a lot of diversity. And when you were telling your story, I was reminded of when I went to Iceland, and that happens to be where I met my husband. That I talked to a lot of people who didn't like it in Iceland, and I asked them, you know, did you go, we called it going out in the economy, but did you go out? Did you go out and experience, did you try any of these things? And they never had gone out. And so
they were military families there, is that correct?
Right.
And they just stayed on the base and did their thing?
Right. And so
okay.
how can you know something and decide you don't like it if you don't try it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Very good example, Rosemary. Thank you. Somebody else was talking. Go ahead.
Well, I had an experience not too long ago. It involved a woman at work that I was talking to. I don't know where I go with it, but we were just chatting at the lunch table during break time, and she mentioned that her wife was going to be deployed. And if I had had any idea, I wouldn't have. I tried not to look shocked. It wasn't a bad thing. It was just that I wasn't expecting it at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so I tried not to look shocked. But being rather naive and sheltered in my life, it was a concept that I hadn't really been exposed to much. But I just looked at her as a child of God, and how he would see her, which is an advantage probably to you as an HR professional to be a member of the church also.
And it helps a lot.
Yeah.
So and I was able to think that that's how she experiences love in her life, and so
okay.
It was
Carolyn,
okay.
No, that's a great example. I think I would have you go back to the last 2 conferences at least. There's been several talks. Hello, Jennifer. Welcome.
Hi.
There's been several talks about that concept that Carolyn talks about, is that we have the responsibility to live in the world and to treat people with kindness and love. At the same time, not necessarily embracing the lifestyle that they live. And I think that, Carolyn, you gave a great example of those things are more and more frequent now in multiple states, that they can be legally married to a person of the same gender. And so that concept of diversity may test who we are, but it's still one that's out there, and it's something we have to be comfortable with. And the brethren and sisters that have given those talks have said we have to treat everyone with kindness and respect and dignity, and be friendly and do the things that make us good neighbors, and good coworkers. So that's a very good example. I appreciate that very much, Carol. And again, it's a different thing if you've never experienced it. So, other examples.
But above all, I didn't want to hurt her feelings.
Absolutely not. Okay, very good. Other thoughts on diversity, what it is, experiences you've had with that?
Jeff, I'd like to say I have a friend who's a single mom. She's never been married, but she adopted 2 girls from India.
Okay.
So she's learning customs and cultures of the Indian, of their culture. And it's actually been enlightening to see how they can bring that, and their friends are, they're being introduced to friends that, obviously are not the same color as them, but they also are learning to interact with each other.
Okay, excellent example. And you know what? That whole experience will bless dozens of lives, if not more, not just their own family, but friends and neighbors and you name it. If they're members of the church, ward members, or if they're another faith, they can be another congregation, that type of thing. So what a great example, and thank you. And that's what a way to make the world a smaller place, because when you have those kind of relationships, everything gets better. It's just a good thing. So thank you for that. That's a great personal example.
Thank you.
All right, others? We got plenty of time. This is better than me talking because you guys have your own experiences. So, other examples of diversity where that's come into play?
We had that in our ward when I was living in Washington State. We had a wide variety of people. We had people that were from Germany, Thailand, the Philippines, Mexico, and many of which I was good friends with. And so it was fun to learn where they were from. My one friend who was from Thailand, she was a convert, and to listen to her conversion story, because she was raised Hindu, and to switch over and things, it was really interesting. And it made our ward just a lot more colorful. We were able to see a lot of differences there.
Okay.
So.
And again, perfect example. That's a great example, and I think that some places that bring those together can be really beneficial to us. So that's excellent. All right, good. Other examples?
I have a question for you, since you're an HR professional. I was having an interview with my journal. She talked a lot about the culture of the company, and that everything that she did, she really tried to stay true to the culture of the company. And it was the company that my husband works for, and they do motorcycle apparel, motorsports apparel.
Cool.
But I was just thinking, as I look at the group of people there, because of the culture of the company, they might differ a little bit, but they're all, moto heads, I guess you'd say. So it's I wouldn't say that they're really trying really hard to be diverse, because they want people that work at that company that have a passion for what they do. Okay. So how does that work out in, is that typical of companies, and how does that work with diversity?
Well, anybody have an answer to that? I'll circle back and give you mine. I'm not going to leave that untouched, Jennifer, because that's great. But anybody else have an opinion on that first?
I was thinking, as she said, that I was wondering if they have the culture of only having people that work there that really like motorcycles, is what I thought she was getting at. And they don't have anybody like myself who's not really interested in motorcycles, maybe work for them. Then how do they have opportunities that open up to find other people that they could convince to like motorcycles?
Okay, very good. And then
I don't know.
You're headed where I was going, Rosemary. Thank you for that. I think the diversity thing. If you're a company that likes motorcycle apparel or gearhead apparel or whatever it is you want to call it, and you don't have a bunch of those folks, you're really not going to be successful, because they know and they live it. And like you said, Jennifer, they've got a passion for that. But what if you had a guy like me in there that I love motorcycles, but I've never ridden one because I think I'm going to get killed on them. The last thing I'm going to do, I drive the freeways in Phoenix. I'm not riding a motorcycle, period. Okay? Right. But what if I had an idea that said, well, let's not just do this. What if you put this into a Macy's and you sold this to a retail store? And maybe somebody like that had that idea. So I think it's a balance. You don't want to have, a bunch of bean counters running the company and people go, you're not part of this. You don't have any excitement for this. At the same time, anybody that's all one flavor, I guess, if you will. You know, we always
Mhm.
call people vanilla if they're just doing the same thing. But what if they're all pistachio, and all you taste is pistachio? I think the
Mhm.
concept of diversity works both ways. Now, I wouldn't want them to be diluted so much they lose their passion, but I
Mhm.
also think that, you know, what if you had somebody that was a little bit different? Maybe somebody that didn't have any tattoos, and I'm supposing, so please humor me if I'm way off. Okay?
Yeah, they're actually a bunch of Mormon guys, but yeah.
Okay. Are they a bunch of Mormon guys?
They are. Well, you know, I mean, not everybody, of course, but
Yeah.
yeah, the majority of the leadership are Mormon guys. But yeah, I just wondered how that comes into play, you know, because my husband worked for Under Armour, which is a huge company out in
Absolutely.
Baltimore, and I saw very little diversity there when I would go into, you know, and meet him for lunch. It seemed like everybody had to be, you know, athletic and in your 20s and super skinny, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, I didn't see a whole lot of diversity
And
within
I
that.
guess my take on that would be, I don't care what you do. I don't
Mhm.
think this concept of diversity backfires. I've seen it have friction, and
Uh-huh.
I've seen it bump heads where, you know, those groups kind of clash. But if you can work through that, I've never seen this backfire if people are willing to give it a try. Again, you don't want to dilute that core and the example you're talking about, but it
Mhm.
doesn't mean that everybody
That
has
everybody
to be
has
the
to be.
same.
Okay.
Could
What
I
do you
make
guys think?
a comment?
Please,
Well,
jump in.
I was thinking it's wonderful to have so many people with a passion. But if you do that and limit it to people with a passion, you may be limiting yourself from some serious talent. If
Mhm.
they are an apparel group, what if you
Mhm.
have a little old lady like me that can sew really well? If you
Yeah.
limit your
Yeah.
help to just people that have a passion for motorcycles, you're limiting yourself from having some serious talent and creative
Gotcha.
skills.
Well,
Yeah.
let's take that, Karen, and go further. Let's say they hired you in to teach how to sew, and maybe you could teach them a technique that they could use with their motorcycle talent that would allow them to be so much better.
Mhm.
But again, your quote, not mine. I don't think that I would call that the little old lady from Texas. Okay, I think you'd be missing out if they didn't have somebody to come and show them that. So that's a
Yeah.
perfect example. Go
Yeah.
ahead, Jennifer.
Oh, I don't think that I don't think that she, when she was, you know, when the HR lady was talking to me about it, I don't think that she meant it as a limiting thing. She just said that she really wanted to make sure that they would fit in the culture of the company.
Okay, and that's a good point. I don't
And
think
you
you
know, I mean,
want
I'm
to.
sure that can mean a lot of different things. I just was
Sure.
wondering how that works with the diversity when you're going for a, you know, because kind of your own company is your own little culture that you can kind
Absolutely.
of make it however you want. So,
Well, you don't want somebody in there that hates motorcycles.
Right.
I mean,
right.
that takes that diversity concept the wrong direction. Or
But does
even
does the accountant have to like motorcycles?
no,
No,
no.
but it is a part of the culture of the, and I think she was also talking about, you know, because it's located in a small town, and so like when they interview people from big cities, she wants to make sure that they can adapt not only to the job but to the culture of the area they're moving into, because if they can't be happy outside of work, the likeliness that they'll be happy at work is slim.
Very good. And most of the time they'll pack up and leave.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Great
Yeah.
examples. Others, either to Jennifer's comment or other diversity examples.
I wanted to say something too, is that sometimes a lot of companies will hire people that are passionate about a certain topic, certain area, and that the company will grow because of that. They'll excel better because they're more passionate about it. If they say that and sell that to other individuals that come in, the individuals say, like, you come in and you're talking and to somebody that is trying to sell you something, he or she can give you the pros and the cons of different things and why it's used this way and why it's used the other way, and you know, they are passionate about it, and you can see it, and they know it.
Okay,
So,
very good.
not to be in an arrogance type, way. It's just that it's, I guess I look at it as that you're confident to talk to them because they're very passionate about it and they know their stuff.
Okay, very good.
Mhm.
Well, and I think you're talking about how do I take this concept of diversity and do that without putting a fire extinguisher on that passion.
Right.
Right.
I think
Right.
that's there's this whole concept. I want to give you a visual picture, and I shared this in my little video. Is again, I'm back to the food thing because it seems to work so well. Now, who likes milkshakes? All right, anybody? Does everybody like milkshakes?
I do.
They may
Yeah.
not like you, but we like them, right? So I throw a bunch of stuff in that blender and I flip the switch. Can I distinguish what was there, for the most part, after it's all blended together?
No.
Most of the time it has a unique flavor of that shake, right?
Mhm.
Okay. Another example. This one's a little more prevalent, I think, and that is we hear about the melting pot, all right, like the melting pot of America, and to some extent that's happened over our history, but I want to a melting pot implies everything came together. Let's call it fondue, all right, and I'm not a cook, so I'm going to probably blow this, but if I've got a bunch of cheeses and I melt them all together, what's it taste like?
Yeah.
Cheese.
It's the whole, right?
Mhm.
Okay, what did somebody say? I missed that.
Yuck.
Oh, yeah? Okay. Not a fondue fan. Okay. But it takes on a unique characteristic like the milkshake did. And I want you to compare that to beef stew or stew of any kind, all right? Stew, and again, you guys are cooks. Somebody describe a good stew for me. You guys from Texas know how to cook down there.
Well, it has a mix of flavors. You can pick out the different flavors in a stew. You can have meat and potatoes and
And there's one, it has a mix of
Carrot.
flavors, and what else?
but it's all one dish.
Right.
Okay.
It is mixed together.
So can you taste both, Carolyn? The different unique flavors, and it has a characteristic all to its own?
Yeah.
So the example, and thank you for sharing that, the example I would add is that I think diversity is much more like a stew than a milkshake or a melting pot. Because I think this is, at least to me, this concept of diversity, and the examples like Nicole had and others looked at that and said, okay, this concept says I can do both. It allows me to be both. I can still tell who the bikers are and the guys that are passionate about that, but I can tell who has the other influences. So in the food example, I can tell the beef or the potatoes or the carrots or the gravy or whatever you put in your stew, all right? But I can tell that stew has a unique flavor in and of itself. And so to me, this concept of diversity is done right, if it's done right, can be the best of both. And it really does allow those things to work well together, in my opinion. Other comments from you guys? Alan, you've been quiet. Anything you would add?
There. Let me take myself off mute.
Okay.
Well, I guess just listening to everybody, it's just been, I've reflected on, several different experiences that I've had with diversity, and I think you're right. As far as a stew, I think that's a great example because diversity really does seem to allow you to see different sides to things. I look at it, just because I've had a lot of callings in the church that, I've been very administrative, and it's been nice to be in presidencies and bishoprics, things where you have diversity, because it gives you that opportunity to see the other side of the fence. Otherwise, you're always, if everybody agrees, you don't get anywhere. But if you get, because in fact, I even, like I've mentioned last week, I drive for UPS, and so a lot of the businesses I deliver to, I find that, when you have that diversity, there are businesses that will literally hire people as their specific position to play the devil's advocate when they're in their board meetings, because that gives them the opportunity to understand a different point of view. Otherwise, everybody's just agreeing and nothing moves forward. But now you can sit back and go, I didn't think about that before.
Okay, very good. Excellent. Thank you.
Could I say something?
absolutely,
I think
Carol.
that diversity is a wonderful thing, but I think it then becomes a challenge of management to cause all of it to meld together correctly, and that could probably be quite a challenge right there.
Absolutely. Well, it's kind of like a big chemistry set. I can make something good out of that, or it could blow up.
You could blow
Okay?
Yeah.
You know, and you have to be careful of that, Carolyn. Your point is well taken. Jennifer's too, is that, you know, this is not an easy thing to do. If you want to be easy and just get things done, just steer clear of this. But if you want to add and grow a company and be creative and do those kind of things, you've got to mix it up. One of the things that's embedded in Alan's comment is this concept of conflict that says it's okay to have conflict and back and forth, and I already say, yeah, I think it's a great idea, it's a great idea, it's a great idea. Well, we just lost $2 million on that great idea because nobody said this is stupid. You know, and it's a tough thing to do, and mixing that up like Carolyn's talking about is really, really a challenge. It's harder to manage, but you can get so much more out of it. Okay, other thoughts? I'm talking too much again. Linda, anything? Please, go ahead.
Well, if you've got, like the example you just gave, you know, like 10 people are saying it's a great idea, and one person says, well, that's not going to work. Well, you know, unless the other 10 people can see through the one person's point of view, then they're probably going to go ahead with the project or whatever they're doing, and you know, because that's a big majority. But you know, so like at where my husband works, there's this one person who at the meetings always finds the worst case scenario for everything. Okay. And they expect that from him. And so they said, well, let's see what Dan thinks about that, you know. And you know, I don't know that they've ever gone with his ideas or you know, totally embraced what he has to say, but they take it into consideration that, oh yeah, well, I guess that could happen if everybody, you know, if it all was, you know, totally not good. So,
yeah, but I bet there's times that he may have saved their bacon from doing something really bad.
Yeah, maybe so. I'm not sure about that, but you know, they could. I know that they, you know, he'd always pipe in what, you know, could go wrong, if you know, like I said, the worst case scenario. So. Sure.
Well, I think the other thing you bring up that's very important on that one, from that perspective, Linda, is it's not just about. Bless you.
Thank you.
You get to sneeze across the country.
I thought I was muted.
Yeah, we can't catch your germs either. You know, you look at that concept and say it doesn't mean because I'm negative that means I'm diverse. It just means it can mean I'm looking at different points of view, and you know, that doesn't mean you got to always put up with that negative side. So hopefully this guy will contribute some positive things along the line and make some things happen there. I'm sure he does, or he wouldn't keep working there. So good thought, Linda. Others? Any other examples of either to the questions we've been talking about or other ones that apply from a diversity perspective?
I wanted to say something more about your stew. When you're putting the ingredients in for the stew, you know, when you first put them in, you can taste them more individually.
Okay.
First in there, and as you add them to you can actually see how it enhances your stew. You know, instead of leaving out the carrots or leaving out the potatoes, and then over time, that stew gets better. I think
it does, absolutely.
The tastes blend together, they meld together, and they become the stew, actually.
Well, and let me ask again, you guys are probably much better cooks than I am. Rosemary, I'm sure you know this well, is that some people say that stew or chili or those kind of things don't even eat it the first day. Let it sit overnight after you've cooked it, reheat it, you know, or soup. A lot of cooks say that that's when it really gets good. Is that kind of the concept you're talking about, Rosemary, correct?
Yes.
And teams that are diverse and can handle that and can handle the craziness that Jennifer talked about, or I think it was Jennifer that talked about that, those are teams that understand that, and it's never going to be a perfectly smooth ride, and it can be, very helpful, and that's a great example. So thanks for sharing that. That I'll have to incorporate that in my example. I've not used that one before, Rosemary, so I'll steal your idea if it's okay with you.
That's fine.
Okay. The other thing I want to ensure we talk about when it comes to diversity is take a minute just to talk about this concept of equal employment. I wanted to spend less time with this. Now, the wording is a holdover again from the 70s, 80s, 90s, whatever it was. And this says, hey, my diversity really isn't good, and I'm not being fair to X group. All right? So let's say I've got a group of all white men that run a company, or all white men that are in a company, and we don't have women or whatever the case may be, whatever group that would be. The equal employment opportunity, or the equal opportunity concept says I'm going to go hire more of those people specifically, and the holdover from the 70s and the 80s was even if they're not talented enough. Now, most of that's been killed in our world that says, you know what, I need some more diversity in this. I'm not going to hire another white guy, pure and simple. We are not hiring another white person into this role. But it doesn't mean that you go out and find a person that's a different ethnic group that's less skilled. In days gone by, that's what equal employment opportunity meant. It didn't matter if you were skilled, it just mattered who you were. Agree, disagree? What do you guys think from the reading or other things? Am I close to that? Or we've kind of kept the good parts of that and hopefully gotten rid of the bad parts of that in today's world? What do you guys think?
Didn't I just read a headline the other day, and I didn't read the whole article, about they had hired a woman firefighter who couldn't do the agility skills that were demanded with the job. So I think that some of it may still happen.
Okay. All right. And what was the flack over that?
That she was hired but couldn't do the same job that the men could do.
Okay. All right.
I don't know if that happens in the military or not. Now women are getting more and more positions in the military that they didn't used to, but they wouldn't used to send them to the front. But I don't know if it doesn't still happen to some extent.
Okay. Okay. Good example. Other opinions? Go ahead.
I was going to say that's kind of her point. There is kind of two issues, because she was talking about the woman that was a firefighter that was hired that couldn't do the job versus the military now. The women in the military now, they have to meet those minimal requirements to have those positions, and it's more of that those positions weren't offered to them now, where they are offered to them. So that's the difference. Okay. But her bringing up the story reminded me of the quiz. It was a quiz, but kind of the homework thing that we had to turn in tonight, which was those different scenarios that we had to read and make a decision. And so it kind of reminded me of the one, because the very first one that was on there was the woman that was pregnant, who didn't tell them that she was pregnant and whether she could lift or not, Right. And so that made me wonder about hers, that woman they hired as a firefighter. Did she present that she could do those things? And then when it came down to actually doing the job, she couldn't. And
my husband, was a fireman for many years. They go through what they call an agility test before they even hire them, and they have to pass this test. They have to do certain skills, and apparently she couldn't pass those skills, but they hired her anyway.
And that's what I'm saying. So whose fault was that at that point in time? Is that her fault because they hired her knowing she couldn't do it?
I guess I should have read the whole article. I just saw the headline.
Yeah, but that's okay. But this whole concept of equal employment says there's a mix of all of this, and that's why I think the equal employment piece is very different from diversity. The equal employment says, okay, am I ever going to get women that can do this if I don't give one of them a break to get that started? Okay. The flip side of that says, I'm fighting a fire with this woman and she can't carry a fire hose. So how much faith do I have that I'm not going to get burned up because she can't carry her weight? Right. Yeah, I don't have an answer to this. It's a tough thing that's out there a lot. It's much less than it used to be, but it's still there. So it's the concept, apparently, at least from what Carolyn's telling us, is alive and well.
And was it fear that they would be sued, or, you know, why did they go forth with that? I wish I'd read the article now.
Okay.
I shouldn't have even brought it up because I didn't.
No, that's fine.
But it made me wonder, though, was the concept because they were afraid they would be sued, or that they were just trying to be open-minded, and the response from the other people that had to pass that exam would be interesting too. And working with her from there forward, is she going to meet a lot of resentment from the other employees?
Right. I don't have an answer for this, but I do know this. This is the concept that makes this equal employment thing a little bit crazy. Because let's say the fire department says, you know, all we have are these guys, they think one way, and, you know, sometimes they're not fighting the fire, I'm winging it here. But, you know, maybe this person could bring in a different way of thinking. And maybe there are different ways to fight the fire, and that may be what the leadership of the fire department is thinking about. I don't know. You know, the theory that most equal employment has today says those minimum standards have to be met, like you guys were talking about. If you meet the minimum standards, great. I've got 10 white guys over here and 2 African-American females. I probably ought to see if I can do something about that and bring one of those African-American females in to do that, but they still meet those minimum criteria. And I'm not saying that's all that way, but that happens quite a bit in that discussion. So, again, no answer to it. Any other opinions from you guys? Okay. Lynn, just something you wanted to add?
No, I agree with what's being said. So I know that there's diversity in the workplace. There are some companies that still don't want to do diversity in the workplace because they like how everything is running. I think that diversity in the workplace will add more work experience. You know, it's not just about age, it's not just about, you know, black and white, but it adds more, I guess, variety, more flavor to the company, helps you to see in different directions, different areas.
Okay. I agree with that. Very good. That's a great summary. All right. We've got about just a couple of minutes left on my clock, and our conversation's gone by quickly. I guess I'd like to kind of summarize what I hear. First of all of you had great comments. Thank you. By the way, I really appreciate it. We even had a good sneeze out of Nicole in there. So, but no, your comments were also excellent, Nicole. Everybody had good comments tonight. So I want you to think about this. How does this concept of diversity or equal employment apply in your companies, the companies you're going to go into, the companies that you've been in, whatever, and what can we do to use this concept to further and be better HR people? I'm going to close with one example. This is real. This happened in my company this week. And I think I shared, if I didn't share this with you, or if I did share this with you, stop me so I don't repeat myself. And when you get old, you forget things. We have almost all men, or all men, in our field operations. We were looking for something called a field assistant. It's a person that learns the plumbing trade, 60% or so, and they're trained to learn plumbing. We hire them for the person, and we hire and we train them how to do plumbing, and then they get turned into a superintendent or supervisor 6 months, a year, 2 years down the road. Well, the individual that applied, her name was Danielle, and I looked at her resume and said, holy cow, this is awesome. And I did a little bit of my HR thing, and I said, guys, I want you to consider hiring a woman for this position. It was like, oh, no, we're going to die. And they said, you know, well, we'll give it a try, but I don't think it's going to work, and she can't do this and probably can't do that and can't do this. I said, well, look, all I want you to do, first of all, is interview her. And the guy that interviewed her came back and said, boy, she's really qualified. She had plumbing skills. She had organization skills. Basically, she was a perfect candidate for this job. If her name was Dan instead of Danielle, they wouldn't have even given it a second thought. And so I said, you know, you interviewed her, you liked her, why don't we give it a try? Today, no more than about 3 hours ago, the feedback was from the same guy that had the hesitation. Excuse me. He said today we have something we build new houses, and we have a soil. When you build a new house, you got to have dirt for the plumbing to go out to the street to hook up to the sewer and that kind of thing, or whatever it is. In our case, we don't have septic tanks out here. It's all sewage lines. He said he handed her a blueprint. She read the blueprint, which she'd never been trained to do. She laid out the soil, meaning put it where everything was supposed to go, and got the job done, and she had never done this before, ever. He said, and she's worked for us for 3 days. And he said, I've never seen this before, ever. And he was just spouting her praises over and over again, and it didn't come up that she was female. It came up that she was talented and skilled, and if this goes like I think it will, she'll be an integral part of that team within a couple of months. So my point to us is that we tried something different. We tried something that was out of their comfort zone. And my role, I'm not patting myself on the back. The point is, sometimes as HR people, you got to get people to do things they're not really comfortable with. And if this goes like I expect it to, it's going to be a great win for our company. And what it does is open the door for other women. And they may or may not be successful, but it at least opens the door to consider that her way of thinking, her way of doing things is going to be different than the men she works with. And as long as the men didn't do something stupid like harassment or other things like that and cause her to leave, you know, this could be a huge addition to our company just based on what this role was able to do. That's what this role is to help facilitate those kind of changes. This was a small win, but I think it was a big one in the concept of what we talked about with diversity. And this was, again, this week, something that was very recent. So I would have you think about it. I would have you apply it in your lives. And I think that's what I hope is fun about this class, is we're talking about real stuff, not just something that's textbook and dull and boring. We're trying, well, HR is dull and boring, but that's beside the point. That's what people tell me all the time. But it's far from it, actually, in my book. It's very much impacting the company and our culture and those things. So any final comments from anyone?
It sounds like you added a different ingredient to your stew. You know, instead of potatoes in there, maybe you put some rutabaga in there and made your stew even better.
I would agree with that. So, and where you wouldn't have thought about rutabaga before, you know, it's potatoes, carrots, and whatever else you put in stew. Okay, you know, it's 3 or 4 ingredients. We throw this in, it's like, well, that's cool. That works. Okay, other final comments? All right, it's 9 o'clock by my time, which is 10 o'clock BYU Idaho time, and I think that's 11 o'clock Texas time, isn't it? Okay. Some of you are past your bedtime. I want to go home since I'm still at work at 9 o'clock at night. So this was an awesome discussion. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I couldn't do it without you, because with you it's boring. You guys bring life to this and add such great diversity. So thank you, and again, we'll do this again next week. Make sure you track the points for being here. Those of you that are watching this, make sure you track the points for watching. And we will see you guys next week. And thank you for all you're doing and having, I hope, a successful class.
Thank you.
So good night, everybody.
Night.
Good night.